Thank you very much. Moly Mines, it's a company I've been associated with now for about 8 years. We started out as a little gold explorer. The little gold deposit we had in New South Wales here will become a mine this year, I believe. It's the Dargues Reef mine. It's now in Cortona. We got out of gold because of the Spinifex Ridge Moly deposit we picked up in 2004. On April Fool's Day 2004, I signed the deal. But it's been an interesting journey we've had over that time. It's located, we're essentially a one project company. We're located in the Pilbara at a place called Spinifex Ridge. This is Spinifex Ridge in this photograph. It has a big moly deposit on it, which we've drilled and done a lot of work on. It's over 1 billion tonne resource. It's both a moly and a copper resource. But accidentally, we tripped over a little bit of iron ore in the process of looking at the moly. Again, I can probably point it out in this photograph. That's the moly deposit there. You can see some drilling in the background, the iron ore. Danny was just talking about Mount Goldsworthy, Shea Gap, BHP's operation. You actually see it in the distance, that ridge on the skyline in the background. That is the Shea Gap and Yarrie, where BHP's railway line comes. And no, we don't have access to it, the obvious question. I get out of jail free card there, so please read it in detail. We are a two project company now. We're a moly company and an iron ore company, and I think I can put a lot of what Danny was saying in context in what I'm about to say, and you'll start to understand. I'm sure a lot of you do anyway, but just how wonderful a metal iron ore is to be in at the moment, and as a rock and a potential rock star, it's pretty hard to beat. Moly Mines, an iron ore, a moly copper project, and probably the other important thing to realise, we do have a major Chinese investor in our company. The company Hanlong has been coming to some prominence in recent times because of its activities in other companies other than Moly Mines, Sundance, Bannerman, and I'm sure you'll hear a lot more of this company. I'll talk a little bit about that as I go, but let's move on. Just locating us, Port Hedland, Spinifex Ridge is about 170 kilometres east or east-southeast of Port Hedland in the Pilbara of Western Australia. Not far from Marble Bar. That's BHP's Yarrie mine there. Goldsworthy, which we've just been hearing about, sits here. We're in reasonable distance, trucking distance, from Port Hedland, which has made it an enormous advantage for us in the sort of things we're doing. I think most of you will be aware of the location here, it's being in northwestern Western Australia. BHP's rail system comes down here to Mount Newman, Rio Tinto's to the south here. I throw that in for the benefit of other people around the world who are watching this presentation. Just returning to the Pilbara is a wonderful area to be developing mines. It's an area with a large-scale mining culture. It's an area with massive infrastructure developments. It has a excellent support of engineering companies and companies that assist the mining industry. Going on to this next slide, this is the area at Spinifex Ridge. The Spinifex Ridge is this brown unit that runs through the centre here. It is an iron formation. It's a low grade. If it was in places like China, it'd probably be mined as iron ore. The rocks in that brown unit average 25 to say 40% iron. Certainly in our location, it's sub-economic. The molybdenum project we have is the big purple blob here. It's a deposit that was discovered back in 1969 and drilled initially by Anglo-American. That was followed up by Esso Minerals, Exxon, in the mid-70s, then essentially got forgotten. The 70s was the last time we saw a boom in the world molybdenum industry, and that's when it was explored. At that time, they identified a resource of about 140 million tonnes. We've drilled it since 2004 when we picked it up and expanded it into a measured and indicated resource of just under 700 million tonnes. But if you throw the inferred in, it's over a billion tonne resource. It's both moly and copper. Back in 2007, we completed a full feasibility study, a bankable document. We got to the point where we were about to bank the project in late 2007, early 2008. I could tell you wonderful stories about the EPA, how they stuffed us up in Western Australia through pure bastardry with respect to granting their lease, but I won't. Come and talk to me afterwards. It's somewhat slanderous and I'd better be careful what I say, but we missed out on financing it. We had a beauty parade of banks at that time. World banks came and saw us, and we eventually went with JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley, the Morgan brothers, and mandated them to raise $1.4 billion to build it at a throughput rate of 20 million tonnes a year. This would have been one of Australia's major mines. In 2008, with the GFC, we never got that away, and by 2009, 2010, we were still marking time. In the meantime, with a very strong crew of geologists and engineers, we started looking around elsewhere, and we happened to trip over a little bit of iron ore up on top of the ridge. We had fully permitted this mining lease. It was development ready by the end of 2007. That mining lease, to permit that, you've got to get environmental permitting, you've got to get native title in place. We did all of that, and then we tripped over a little bit of iron ore on the ridge here. That iron ore has turned into an absolute gold mine. I've been in the mining business for over 42 years. I was telling someone a while ago, I started working literally next door to this building. The Geological Survey used to be in the building next door to here. In 1966 I started there. This iron ore, we've drilled it. We've got a small resource. I referred here to 5 million tonnes. It's now up to about 8 million tonnes. We've put it in production and we're shipping iron ore. We were able to get it into production very quickly because that mining lease had been permitted. And on the back of that, we got access to wharf capacity at Port Hedland at the new Utah Point facility, which opened about in November last year. And we got the last slot in Utah Point for shipping this. But I'm going to concentrate on the iron ore a little bit to start with, and then we'll move into the moly. Quickly, just corporately, everyone's got a presentation on their table. You'll see we've got a major shareholder, which is Hanlong. Hanlong have 54% of us. They put 200 million into the company earlier this year, and we've gone on from there. They've also organised financing for the debt financing for the project together with my personnel, and we are in the process of filling a funding gap for the financing of the moly. Hanlong, just to briefly describe them, they are a Sichuan-based company out of Chengdu. It is a conglomerate of, they're involved in all sorts of things. It started out and it's largely owned by one individual, Mr. Liu Han. He was a futures trader on the China Futures Exchange in Shanghai. He's parlayed that into a significant fortune, and he's now involved in all sorts of things you see here. A very entrepreneurial gentleman, about 45, and very impressive. He's put an impressive team together. They came to us and said, would you like to be the vehicle we use to create an international, an Australian mining house and potentially an international mining house? And because of debt we had in the company at the time, we agreed, and we've gone on from there. And the 200 million that they put into the company paid off our debt, and we're in a very strong position, and as I said, we're now in production in iron ore. Coming to the iron ore, this is Spinifex Ridge, the ridge itself. There's 3 deposits, one sitting here, another one sitting in there, and a third one over here. We've found a 4th one since then there. Now, the interesting thing about this deposit is that we decided in May last year to build the mine. By November, we were mining. By December, we put out our first shipment. 6 months it took us to build the mine. The major thing we had to do was to actually build this road up the ridge. You can see there's cliffs here, and to get that up onto the ridge. We have done it entirely using contractors. At any given time, I have about 7 or 8 of my staff on site. The mining is done by contractors. The crushing and screening plant here is owned and run by contractors. We truck the ore into Port Hedland using contractors. We ship it through Utah Point using contractors. I spent $18 million building this mine, 1/8. We paid for it in 4 months. Is there any other mine in Australia, I'm sure someone will probably come up with it, but I haven't heard it yet, that's paid for itself in 4 months? And interestingly, it came into production, we got to full capacity on the mine in April this year. We expected to be there in July, so my team did a brilliant job in bringing it on, as did our contractors. Resource here, you can see there's about 8 million, it's over 8 million tonnes now. It's not the world's best iron ore, it's about 58%. We're regularly shipping 59, in fact. It's got high phosphorus, high silica, high alumina, but tell you what, you can make a buck out of it, and don't be fooled by the BHPs and Rio of the world saying that high phosphorus, high alumina, high silica is unsaleable material. It is very saleable, certainly in the current market. Some photographs. We actually trucked the iron ore. You heard of Goldsworthy's 100 kilometres out. We're actually 200 kilometres. We're shipping in road trains into Port Hedland, about 110 tonnes a truck. The mining fleet, all the mining's done by BGC Contracting. Rapid Crushing built the plant, own it. They deliver us a product. And a company called Bullbuck bought 14 brand new transport units for the contract. One of these trucks fills that complete road train. Think about it. That carries about 100 tonnes, about 110 tonnes fit in there. Once the ore gets into Port Hedland, the trucks side dump into the Utah Point facilities, which is essentially a bin, goes onto a radial stacker. The ore is stacked in windrow. And when the ships come in, front-end loaders pick it up and dump it into these bins onto a conveyor, and I'm not sure you can see it, but the ship loader's in the back there. Very simple operation built by the Port Hedland Port Authority. As I said, we got the last stockpile area. There's 13 of them there. We anticipated putting 800,000 tonnes through it a year. Looks like this year we'll put 1 million tonnes through it. We are now optimising it, seeing if we can get more tonnes than that. Consmin are putting about 2 million tonnes. They got 5 of these stockpile areas. We've got 1. They're putting 1.9 million tonnes this year through. We're putting 1 million tonnes through one of them. So we're pretty efficient operators. That's just the very simple processing circuit. That's not of great interest. Our current mine design has about 4.5 million tonnes in it of the iron ore. That will expand. I believe at the end of the day we'll probably put about 10 million tonnes through here. We're picking up bits and pieces. Our costs are running at about $65 a tonne FOB Port Hedland. That's including our biggest cost is trucking. Last quarter this was actually about $58, $59, and you put that up against Fortescue's, whose costs were running at $52 a tonne last quarter. We're pretty proud of our operation. We budgeted about 800,000 tonnes this year. It looks like we'll do 1 million. Our costs will sit in this area. We're netting in China about $130 a tonne landed. We're banking $60 to $70 a tonne at the moment pre-tax, all costs met, including royalties. So if you want an interesting operation, think about this. $18 million to build, and we're going to net 55 to $65 million worth pre-tax this year. Beautiful little operation. We're now starting to pick up other small deposits in the vicinity. Our biggest asset is that shipping capacity at Port Hedland, having access to Utah Point. Now allows us to bring other, even 250,000 tonnes someone else has, which is stranded nearby. We can bring it across to our facility, crush it, send it into Port Hedland, get it out. Iron ore, wonderful business to be in, guys. And the extraordinary thing is that Lou Han, the owner of Hanlong, the day I signed the deal with him in Hong Kong about a year ago, he said, "Oh, by the way, we understand I just heard you got a bit of iron ore." He didn't know about it when we did the deal. He thought we were just a moly company. Now he's owns 20 or 19% of Sundance, and I don't know where that's going, but I think it's pretty obvious to see where it's going. We're looking for other iron ore projects at the moment in Australia. We're negotiating on a couple at the moment. Let's talk quickly about Moly Mines. I'm not sure how much time I got left. I can rave on about these things a bit. 3 minutes. Very quick 3 minutes, guys. You're going to get molybdenum. This is how to build a mine quickly. This is some of the equipment we ordered and paid for and got ourselves into debt on. These 3 of those go to make 1 ball mill. We pre-ordered them in early 2007, well before the GFC, and that's why we bought Hanlong in to pay off our debt. The deposit, see, this is a schematic showing the deposit. The deposit will be a very large open pit. Strip ratio is about 1 to 1. The iron ore sits on the ridge there. This is what the tailings and waste dumps associated with the deposit would look like once we build it. This is a long life project. 10 million tonnes, 20 million tonnes. We're going to build it now 10 million tonnes per annum throughput, basically half the scale we were before. It'll produce 12 to 13 million pound of molybdenum per annum. It'll be the world's next major moly mine. And as I said earlier, we've actually got it largely financed. I'll skip through some of these. Molybdenum, you probably want to know what it is. It's an alloying agent for steel. Your kitchen sink's about 4% moly. Not all stainless steel has it, but about 25 to 40% of stainless steels use some moly in them. It's a hardening agent, it's a strengthening agent, it's an anti-corrosion agent. It's largely unsubstitutable in its main uses. Its consumption is growing anything from 5 to 7% per annum. The world has not had a major new moly mine for 20 years. A lot of it traditionally came out of the copper industry. It's increasingly being produced from pure moly mines. The main mines were in the Cordilleran mountain ranges of North and South America, the copper mines. Now it's in China is a big producer, but it's keeping it all within the country. It's essentially corralled it into the country, and the Western world needs moly. Moly prices have been flat. It's trading around $15 a pound at the moment. If you go back to the to the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and early 2000s, it was $3 to $4 a pound. It hit. Sorry, this is fairly recent. Got to go way back. In the mid 2000s, it got as high as $42 a pound. Where is it going to from now? We're uncertain, but if you look at what's happening in world steel production, you look at even in today's paper today, I saw something about Chinese stainless steel production growing at 7% per annum for the next 10 years. You look what BHP, Rio, Vale, Fortescue, the massive expansions in iron ore production. It says a lot about where they see steel production growth going in the future. About 15% of all steel produced in the world is specialty steels, such as moly steel, such as stainless steel. Resource, it's big. Reserves, about 450 million tonnes, a further 600 million tonnes in inferred and resource, in measured and indicated in resource. That is a subset of all of this. Project financing in place, the debt financing, China Development Bank, we signed it a couple of months ago. It is ready for drawdown. It's at LIBOR plus 380 points, about 4.2%, 12-year facility. Impossible to get in this part of the from our banks in this part of the world, those sort of rates, that sort of length, time frame. We have a funding gap at the moment, which, because of the choppy markets as they stand, where we are contemplating how we fill that. It's about $200 to $300 million, depending on whether we boot the power plant and gas pipeline to the site or whether we build our own. But there will be news coming over the next few months on that. That's essentially what I got to say. We've got a strong technical team. We're a bunch of mine builders, been building mines all over the world. I've got about 50 guys on staff. A lot of people in the room here know them. Our technical team is very strong, and that's what one of the things Hanlong said when they came to us: keep your technical team together, keep your board together. I think that's probably it. Thank you very much. I hope you've learned a little bit.